Simon here, Explosive Action, and I am back with a slightly different video this time. This is a response video to Kellen from Killing for Company. The question he asks is, can metalheads be audiophiles? Let's find out. So I thought this was a really interesting topic, so let's have a bit of a conversation about this, and also go through my equipment that I use to play all the stuff that I show on this channel. Can metalheads be audiophiles? Well, what are we talking about when we talk about an audiophile? You kind of get a cliched picture in your head of like some 65-year-old grey-headed man that's got speakers that are like $400,000 shaped like the inside of a human eardrum. He has one of those turntables that's in like a crystal shell that costs about the price of a small house. You know, that's the person that spends 10% of their income on interconnecting cables. That's an audiophile, and that is the end of the spectrum that I think most of us kind of identify as an audiophile. I'm not that person, and I don't think anyone watching this video is that person, but I think I completely agree with Kellen in that we can aim higher than we did when we were 15-year-olds. And that's what I've been trying to do with my gear here. I have a setup that I'm happy with. Is it going to be my permanent setup forever? Probably not. I think that's part of the game as well. You do need to have decent equipment. Even when you're playing stuff like, you know, the new Phobophilic. I mean, this is just filthy, horrible death metal. Does that mean I should be playing it on a Crosley turntable worth $80 through USB powered speakers? No, you can do much better and you'll bring out the sound, even when it's something like this. Or what about if I'm digging deep and pulling out an old, like, original copy of S.A. Slayer Go for the Throat? This thing wasn't recorded particularly well. Should I therefore just listen to it on, you know, Grandpa's old AM radio and stick my record player into the back of it? No, you can do better than that. And I think that's really what this is about, is don't just buy the cheapest thing that you find in the Kmart catalogue that says turntable and it's got a built-in amplifier and like it's that stuff is that just leads to madness, and it leads to people not appreciating what they've got. I think you need to aim higher than minimum when you're buying equipment, not just turntables. It's definitely the main thing to focus on when you're buying equipment these days is the turntable, because there's so many moving parts and there's so many different things that can go wrong. But also, if you're buying a CD player, you know, I would highly recommend avoiding basically anything you would find in a regular shop. And by regular shop, I mean, you know, in America, if you went into Walmart and there was electronics section and you saw a CD player by some brand like Telefunken, don't take it home with you. Even if it's marked down to $49.95, you're not going to have a good time. Spend a little bit more. We all go out and we buy 5 LP box sets and then we show them off on Instagram, and I think put that money into some better equipment, you know, rather than the box set that you're going to show off once and play twice. Like, there's something to be said about spending a little bit of money on your equipment. And look, we're all adults now. We have adult money. That does come with us having a bit more ability to spend some of our free cash on things that we enjoy, not just the items and the things that we consume. So yeah, definitely spend a bit of money on your setup is my recommendation. I'm not going to sit here and talk about should you buy new or should you buy old. I've made my choice, and I'm going to run you through the equipment that I've got. So when I was putting together this hi-fi ensemble, I made a choice of going Pioneer. Pioneer's always been a brand I've respected and enjoyed, and I also wanted to go with a particular aesthetic. I think that was part of the game for me as well. I wanted to get something black. I've done silver hi-fi before. I've done the full late 70s silver retro hi-fi. It comes with positives, it comes with a lot of negatives. This time round I wanted to do something that is definitely not considered audiophile, but I think is around about the last time you could buy consumer grade equipment of good quality without having to blow the bank before everything went kind of terrible through the 2000s, and now only good equipment is from generally high-end end of the spectrum. I wouldn't even trust equipment that's in this price range from some of the bigger names anymore, because a lot of the time, and I'm not going to pick on Pioneer, but there are brands that you used to know from the 80s and the 90s, and you started to see them releasing equipment again. They're not the same companies. They are all rebadge. Things like TEAC. I keep seeing TEAC turntables. They're not TEAC. It's the same basic turntable that you find on Alibaba, and all they do is change the logo. It's just junk. And that's the kind of stuff I think everyone needs to avoid these days. Does that make me an audiophile? No, it does not whatsoever. It just means I've got a little bit of respect for the music, I think, is all this is about. I want to be able to play this to a degree that is showing respect to the music, no matter how ridiculous it is. I might be playing Ecuadorian raw black metal, but it's going to sound better on my equipment that I've selected than it will on some Crosley turntable that comes in a suitcase plugged in to the world's worst speakers you've picked up from Aldi for $5. And we're going to take a look at the CD player. As I said, this is all Pioneer, and I've got here the PDR W839. Now, this one was not one that I picked to buy myself. This one was actually a hand-me-down, and it's an interesting unit, and this is what started the aesthetic and why I decided to stay with it. Like I said, it's a late 90s setup, and I think this unit's from around about 98, 99, and I'll take a look at the insides here. It's got 3 discs, which is really cool. So I can set up 3 CDs in the different trays and then flick between them, which is very handy. If I can put in 3 CDs, I just hit play on the first one and I'll let it go, and it'll play the 3 CDs in sequence, which is really, really good. There's something over here which is really interesting, and this is not something that I would recommend to everybody. This is just a nice bonus feature that I'm happy to have in this unit. This is a CD recorder, and I'm not talking like a computer CD-ROM drive. That's not what this is. It's a CD recorder. These things take different blank CDs, CDRs, than a computer does. If you put a computer one in here and try to record, it doesn't know what to do with it. You need audio grade CDRs, and you can still get them. They're a little bit harder to find these days, but they do still make them, I believe. And well, what this was originally made for was copying from one side to the other. Now, we don't need to do that kind of thing anymore. If you're making backups of things, that's where you use your computer. But where it is very handy, and what I've used it for as recently as this year, is recording from cassette onto CD, because the chain of cables and the systems that I've got connected here, there's no computer involved, there's no extra noise to get in the audio chain. It's just from one to another with one set of cables, and also that's just all Pioneer, so I think that kind of helps. So I recorded some tapes onto CD, and the quality was fantastic. There was no difference between the tape and the CD, and yeah, I've done that a few times to make digital copies of some demos. So that's a really cool thing about this player, and of course this side can be used as a regular playing side as well. So this is a really nice player. Again, it's not one that I would say go out and get unless you really want this recording side. I don't think most people would, but it's a nice little extra feature, and I do like having it. Next up we have the cassette player. This is the Pioneer again, CTW208R. Bit of a mouthful, and this is a dual deck player. Now, most audiophiles will tell you avoid the dual deck players. They're not wrong. around about the mid 90s to late 90s, most players were making, most companies were making dual decks. I guess the price just got cheaper, that it was easy to do them. I don't really know. And look, there can be some mechanical trade-offs, but I've had no real problems with this one. I had to get the belts changed, but you know, that happens. It's 90s equipment. The belts do degrade. Otherwise, it's a great little cassette player. So I'm really happy with this one. So yeah, it's double-sided. Just pop the tape in either side, and you can dub from one to the other if you wish, or you can, in the chain that I've got hooked up here, I can go from CD to tape, or from tape to CD, and from vinyl to tape as well if I want. But it's just a nice unit. It's all electrical buttons, so except for the eject and the power switches, it's all soft touch. It supports, and this is an interesting thing, that if you do have a collection of tapes, and I mean tapes going back to the 80s, and if you enjoy those tapes, it does pay to have a deck from no later than the 90s, because you will get still the Dolby noise reduction options. Cassettes used to be released with Dolby noise reduction in various levels, Dolby B, Dolby C, a few different other ones. That whole thing is expired now. No matter what tape you buy now, even if it's got a Dolby logo on it, they do not have any noise reduction. It's all just smoke and mirrors. I've seen some demo tapes that just, you know, for a bit of a laugh, they put Dolby logos on it. It's wrong. They're just having a bit of fun. There is no license available at the moment for that kind of thing, so it is not being done. And secondly, if you were to go and buy some modern tape deck that was not of a high end, and I think there might be a couple of very high-end Denon machines still in production, but if you managed to buy something that looked a bit like this and was brand new, there's a few things you want to know to avoid. The tape mechanisms inside are all garbage. There is only one company making the actual tape mechanism in the world, and it is a Chinese company, and it is rubbish. Absolute rubbish. I'll link to a video in the description from a channel I watch called TECHMOAN. Very, very informative channel. He talks about audio equipment, video equipment, and he's talked at length about the quality of current tape deck mechanisms, why you have to avoid them, because they are just all rubbish. They all have problems with what you call wow and flutter, which is when the tape cannot get consistent speed when it is playing in the deck, so it sounds like it's going whoa, whoa, like you're listening to some kind of horrible diva singer warbling away. So yeah, that's why you avoid those ones. But at this point, this is the last generation of decent tape mechanisms. Could I do better? Absolutely I could. I absolutely could do better than this. If I was to pick again, I would go for a single tape deck rather than two. I don't need the two. And the effort of putting in the second tape deck, I think the quality, there's not say a quality loss, but they put more effort when there's only the one tape deck, if you know what I mean. There's just, they don't have to worry about two parts, so I think there's more effort to put into the single tape deck to make it work at its optimum. But I love this aesthetic so much of the matching black Pioneers, and I've yet to find a single deck Pioneer from this era, the sort of 95 to 98, that has this particular logo on it. This is when Pioneer changed their logos. They had a different one before. So I don't know what the future holds for me in Pioneer and this equipment. I might very well go back further and change these to 1980s decks over time, which will come with the older logo, but perhaps a bit more increased quality and reliability. But that's why we're always never satisfied with our equipment as audiophiles, which I'm not, but we're always here upgrading and trying to get the best we can out of our music. The amplifier I've got here is the Pioneer A109 Direct Energy MOS. This is a solid amp and it cranks the sound. I cannot put it higher than about that. If I put it higher than that, I'm going to lose my hearing. Lose my hearing. I'm going to get bleeding ears. It's a really powerful amp for the price that I paid for it. Yeah, there are better ones in this range, but I have no real need to change this at all. I'm very happy with the sound that comes out of it. And it doesn't get interfered with too much in the way of graphic equalizer. In the past, in my 70s gear, I had a separate graphic equalizer. I don't think that's particularly necessary. That is the domain of the audiophile. Someone's going to spend their entire day tuning 40 kilohertz up a little bit, 20 kilohertz down a little bit. Look, all you really need, particularly with metal, is bass and treble and a loudness button. And the loudness button stays on. That's a simple thing. Otherwise, this is a really, really good amp. It's got everything I need on it, and it's from that era when you still get all the inputs that I can use. It's got a proper CD, which is apparently playing. Tuner for radio, which I don't care about. It's got a built-in phono preamp. Now, this is important. For new players, if you're buying new equipment these days, you will most likely not have a phono stage built into your amplifier, which is why the modern turntables, your Audio-Technicas and yeah, that kind of stuff, usually advertise that they've got a built-in phono preamp. Now, if you don't have a built-in phono preamp in your turntable, you have to buy a separate little box and then plug that in to a line level input, such as this one here, line. And yeah, that's the advantage of having something like this. It does it all for you. Just plug the turntable directly in here, and I can use an old school turntable or one that does not have a built-in preamp. And yes, I'm not actually using the line input on this one, but if I was going to do something with the line, I might plug in something digital. I've been toying around the idea of throwing in a Bluetooth receiver into the back of that, just for a bit of a laugh. Something I could just throw in there. Maybe if I was streaming stuff from my phone or whatever, I could just cast it straight onto the line level if I was feeling so inclined. But yeah, I haven't really felt that need too much. And the last one here is the tape deck, tape1/CDR/MD, showing the era that this is when it mentions mini disc. Mini disc is a really cool format, but we don't really need to talk about that one here, as I don't have any, and it's probably really not worth getting into at this point in time. But the crowning jewel of this setup for me is definitely my turntable. This is the Pioneer Direct Drive PL71, which has the old logo. So that is, you know, one of the reasons, if I want to be consistent, to change out the rest of the equipment with 80s technology Pioneer rather than 90s. But anyway, so what I've got here, it's a wood plinth. It's on a suspension, which is something you just don't get these days. The whole thing is suspended. And that really helps when you... That will not make it skip. It all gets kind of absorbed, and that's really good. From what I can gather, this unit was made in around about 1978, 77, 78, and it is built like an absolute beast. So it's all like solid metal plinth, sorry, wooden plinth, and a metal actual turntable on the top here, which is really, really solid. The whole thing weighs a ton. It's got 33 and 45 buttons that are automatic. Now, this is also very good. I actually find it so surprising. Some of the lowest grade turntables you can buy now, when you get past the bare minimum, the suitcase ones, and then you move on to the next bare minimum, which is like your very entry-level Audio-Technica, you're still in automatic turntable range. But when you get past that and you're on to the next step, it all goes manual. It's like all the technology we learnt in the last 30, 40 years was just forgotten. Everything becomes a manual turntable. This one is not fully automatic. I didn't go for that, but at least you can press a button to change the speed. Some of these turntables now, if you want to play a 45, a 7-inch, you have to physically go in and move a belt. And that to me just feels like we've lost a war or something. That is ridiculous. Don't, just don't. Particularly if you've got a big collection of 7-inches, you're going to drive yourself mad. And what's particularly good as well on this is I can adjust the speed. So if I have the 33 running now, which I do, you can be assured I've tuned this. It's got this little orange light that then shines on here, and you look for the groove that is not appearing to move. And it does look like it might be a little bit out at the moment, but I will just do a demonstration. If I turn this knob for 33, you'll see the speeds changing. The idea is to find the groove that does not appear to be advancing, which is very hard for me to do in this camera. Anyway, And that's how you can make sure you get a proper 33 RPM speed, and the same you can do with 45. So this is the kind of stuff you want to look for in quality. You want to be able to maintain your listening. You want to actually be able to get in there and change stuff. Don't just buy the machines that have one button that turns it on and off, and that's all you can do, and that's something you can do better. So make sure you do better. What's important to have as well is a proper anti-skating. So the idea with anti-skating is that, I'm not going to do it, if I put the needle, talking like my granddad, if I put the stylus on the turntable with a record that had no groove, if the anti-skating is set correctly, it should stay exactly where I put it. If the anti-skating is off, you'll see it moving around even if there's no groove. So you want to make sure that is set correctly. Why? This completely affects the sound. If it is moving this way when there's no groove, when there is a groove, it's going to be pushing towards the inside of that groove, and you're going to get distortion in the music. That's what you need to be able to adjust this stuff. You don't want to spend years trying to adjust it. That's when you're an audiophile. But I think as metalheads, we can get to some level of customization and comfort and then be satisfied, which is where I've got to with this. And you just need to make sure, the only way you can do that is by having some decent quality to start with, and that's the whole point of this, is having decent quality. Now, this is one thing that I have made a change to, and I think I recommend this to most people. So the hardware of these 70s turntables cannot be beat. They cannot be beat. Unless you're going to go and spend Audiophile $50,000 on turntables. This is an excellent machine. However, it came with, and this part here is, so this is the tone arm, this is the head shell, this is the cartridge, and the thing on the bottom, which is maybe very hard to focus on, the little metal dealie that you'd lower onto your record, it's not going to focus, is the stylus. They're also called the cantilever for the very tip of it. I find the best thing to do is to swap out this whole head unit, or at least the cartridge, with something modern and something that is of quality. So what I've got here, as you can see, this is a Pioneer turntable, but that's a Nagaoka brand head shell with a Nagaoka brand cartridge. The MP110, and it's a Japanese made cartridge, it's still made now. It's a modern cartridge, and I find the combination of a quality modern cartridge on an old turntable to be the winner. There's plenty of modern cartridges that I think are suitable, and I ended up picking this one after quite a bit of research. There's some of the most popular cartridges you can get now would be the red and the blue from, I can't remember, I've just forgotten the name of the company that puts them out. Anyway, I'll put that down here. They're incredibly popular, but there was always these reports I was reading that they weren't particularly suited to loud rock music. It was always written as like loud rock music. That they were quite harsh. They were kind of good for dance music or something like that. Audiophile red, Audiophile blue, there you go. And this Nagaoka came recommended because it had a well-rounded sound, and also what I really like is apparently, and I confirm it is true, it handles surface noise very well. So if you've got records that have a little bit of surface noise, it does an incredibly good job at absorbing it, which is another reason I love this thing. So very simple to replace an entire head shell. These things just unscrew. But then what you need to do, and I'm not getting into it in this video, you can go and watch 500 videos on YouTube about it. You need to balance your tone arm, you need to adjust the position of the cartridge in the head shell. You need to use a measuring device. You can just get them on the internet, print them out, and that whole measuring device is a piece of paper or a ruler that goes from here to here that has points that you drop, and you need to try and align. It's a cartridge alignment device. So that is something that you definitely need to do to get the quality of sound out of your turntable. Even if you are buying one of these things that comes from the shop and it says it's all been aligned, and you know you've bought a Riga Planar 3 or something, one of those modern things, you need to go through this process. Otherwise you will never be happy with the sound you're getting. You're going to go, oh, that's why people stop buying records. They sound so hissy, and all the S's go tss. Like, there's, oh, why did I buy a turntable? Of course, you didn't set it up right, and I can tell you for a fact you didn't set it up right because I've been through this before. In 2001, I went through a stage of buying records. I bought a turntable, and I thought it was as simple as plug in, turn on, put on record. I was never happy with the sound. I was like, everything is crackly, everything is hissy. I don't know why I did this, and I sold the whole lot. And this is 21-year-old me. 41-year-old me made a different decision and actually spent some time learning the instrument. And once you do that and you've got it set up correctly, that is how you're going to enjoy your turntable for a long time. You also want to make sure you change your stylus regularly. They recommend about 1,000 hours, so I'm not saying keep a logbook, but maybe once every 2 years or so, buy a new stylus. That's about all you need to do. Now, day-to-day care of these things, quite simple. Static brush. When the turntable is running and the record is playing, you do that, and you do that to the end. Do it a few times. You are removing the static charge, which makes crackles and pops. You're also getting rid of surface dust, very important. The other thing that I think is very useful to do prior to every play is one of these guys, which is a stylus brush. Simple matter of putting underneath and moving from back to front. When you do it, if I put it on to turntable mode and let it set itself up, you should actually hear it on the speakers. Don't know if that's coming across, but you can hear the sound of it. And that's me cleaning dust off it. I do that every time I flip. So side A, put the record down, clean it, get the brush, clean it, then put it on there. Get to the end, side B, do all that again. It only takes a few seconds and you're going to enjoy the record a lot more. So I definitely recommend that as your minimum for playing back records. Now what I'm going to show you briefly is how I clean a new record. And when I say new, I usually mean an old record. A brand new record that is in a poly liner that's come from the factory, and it does appear to be fine. I will probably just give it a dry dust using the anti-static brush that I showed before to play, and that'll be fine. That covers 95% of most things I buy new. If I buy something new and they've cheaped out on a paper inner and it doesn't have a poly liner, it will probably get a clean from me, because you never know, all the bits of paper particles and dust from the factory will have contaminated the record, so I give it a clean. What we've got here though is a vintage 1980, I think it's 1988 record. 89 is a 1989 record, old Road Racer press here of Intruder thrash band, which you're getting a sneak peek at my upcoming heavy metal / thrash metal update video. This one needs a clean. It's used, obviously. It's in pretty good nick. I'd probably call it a VG+, but it is pretty dirty. Anything that I get used gets a clean, and I will show you the process that I do that in, because I think this is important when you are playing records and buying records to get the best quality out of them, so you can pretend to be that audiophile. You need to get everything set up for success from the beginning, and that involves cleaning the record. So we're going to do that now. I've got this stuff, which is an Australian made spray called Wax Wash. I'm really happy with this one. Every single person in the universe will give you their recipe for a liquid cleaner. I'm not going to argue pros or cons, but this one has worked out well for me. I imagine in the States you won't get this, but you'll find something at your local record shop. Just ask the guy behind the counter what they sell. It'll probably all be good. And I have these two cloths. These are microfiber cloths. We have wax on and a wax off, a wet clean and a dry clean. These cloths came in a device I previously had called a spin clean. That was a plastic piece of junk where you put the record in vertically and you spun it in a pool of water with some detergent in it. and then you dried it with the cloths and everything was supposed to be wonderful, but all I found was it made things sound worse, so I got rid of that horrible thing. But I kept the cloths. The cloths were good. So let's do this now, which is going to be pretty difficult with me holding the camera, so let's go. What have I got here? I have an old yogurt container. Why do I have a yogurt container? Because it fits over the center label. I don't want to try and get any goo on that. And then spray until you get a nice even coating. There you go. And then I take it off. I'll let it sit for about 30 seconds and then I'll get into the cleaning. So now that the liquid has settled onto the record, I get the wax on cloth. I kind of bundle up like this, hold my fingers over the center. You notice it's all on a nice towel. You can use a tea towel, anything soft. And then I push around with a bit of a, I'm actually giving it a bit of grunt here. You can see me sort of pushing into it. Always following the groove. And get all that liquid in. Never go against the groove, or you're just going to damage your record. So I do this a few times. And this is not for show. I had 2 of these records I needed to clean, so you're just getting to watch me do it. There you go. That's pretty clean. Then I get the second one, which I keep dry. And I do that lightly now. I'm not pushing in. I just do it lightly in a bit of a circle. And then let go. Give it one of these. Again, I'm keeping it in a circle. Absolutely trying to not get anything against the grain, and that is looking much nicer. Not that you'll be able to tell, particularly when I compare it to the side, which is still filthy. And that's how I clean a record. Another important tip, definitely worth knowing, is never put a clean record into an old liner. The liner that came with your record, if it's a poly one that's separate, throw it away, into the bin straight away. You don't want to use it again. If you've got a paper one, well, you can put this replacement liner inside it if you want. You can pop one in there. That's what I tend to do. So you've got to make sure that you use a nice clean one. So just definitely keep a stock of these things. I don't go outrageous. I don't buy the high fidelity thingy ones. I just buy nice new poly liners. You can get them for like $10 for a box of 100, and I think that does the job fine. Those of you that have watched room tour videos on this channel before, you've probably seen the speakers that I use. This is an area that I'm happy with the sound, but any audiophile would probably slap me for what I've done, because there's a few things that are wrong. Firstly, the speakers I've picked are good. These are Tannoy. These were a set of what they call monitor speakers that I acquired quite cheaply. Monitor speakers means that they've been tuned, they're fine-tuned, they're designed to be played and used in a recording studio when actually recording, because you can trust that they are neutral levels, that the bass and level and treble are all at like 0. They're all at neutral range and everything's been tested. Others could probably explain a little better to you, but what it results for me is high quality sound. They're only little bookshelf speakers. Now I can't fit anything bigger in this place. That is not going to happen, so I have to make do with my space. But the sound I get out of these is really, really strong. So I've got, as mains, I've got this Tannoy here, and then up higher on this shelf is its brother. Now what have I done wrong? They are not in alignment. Any audiophile would slap me right now because they one is higher than the other and one is lower than the other. Your speakers are meant to be in height alignment, but there's just only so much I can do, and I've not actually noticed that particular problem myself. Usually when I'm listening to music, I'm sitting in this chair because I'm usually doing stuff while I'm listening to music, and these two in their position actually work really well for me. There are more speakers around here, and this is where I've done another audiophile Neddy no-no. We've got this little guy here, which is a bookshelf from Energy, which was a Canadian company, and it's a really nice little bookshelf. I've got another one over here, and just for the hell of it, I've got one more up there. Now how did I achieve that? In a terrible, terrible way that has not impacted the sound for me and my ears, and is definitely very anti-audiophile. The amplifier can only support one left channel and one right channel, which is that guy and that guy. So I just added more wires and did them in series. So that's another right, and the one over there was another right, and this one's another right, and that's another right, and that's the only left. But I've not noticed any problems. All it does is add a fuller sound to this room. Ideally, yes, I would like to change out this amplifier to one that has 2 zones. So they're usually called zones. You have a zone A and zone B. And this one didn't have it. It just has a left and a right. The Model Up apparently does, and that is what I would one day like to do. Actually have multiple zones set up and do the speakers properly. But you got to make do sometimes with your space and your budget. And I guess that's what this is all about for me, is what you can afford to do with your income and your space, but not substituting the basic quality that you need. So can metalheads be audiophiles? I would argue, who cares? The whole point is to have decent quality equipment that will represent your music of all your genres as good as you can. You can do that without having to go down the $50,000 route. I think similar to Kellen, who had a budget of about $1,000, that's where everything is here for me. I'm around about the $1,000. Most of it's in this turntable because it's an absolute beast. That's really the question to ask, is does it really matter? Does any of that matter, being an audiophile or aiming for audiophile quality? No, just aim for your best. And Kellen was right in that if that means not buying a few records and putting that money into some decent equipment, do it. Because you'll enjoy the records you've got, the CDs you've got, the tapes you've got more, if the sound is better and you've spent a little bit of time on it. I didn't show things like cabling. I don't put too much weight into that. As long as you don't use the most thin shoestring RCA cables that you find that come free with a VCR, you're doing okay. These days, because everyone's using HDMI for everything modern, you can actually find things like monster cables quite cheap if you go scouring. Just get good, decent quality, thick RCA type connectors between all your equipment and you're doing fine. Make sure you ground your turntable into the grounding loop with the amplifier or anywhere else, and you'll get rid of any annoying hum. There's basics you can do to make everything sound better, and when it comes to the turntable, calibration is key. Like I said, you need to balance that turn arm, you need to set up and align your cartridge correctly, and you need to keep it, just like people will spend thousands of dollars polishing their car, you do need to keep these things running, and that's just part of the game, I think. Don't just buy your Crosley suitcase, throw an LP on it and go, well, that sounds average, and then live with it. Put a bit of time and money into your equipment, is what I'm saying. And I think Kellen's saying the same thing too. Hope you enjoyed this slightly different video from me. It's a little bit ranty, but it was an interesting topic and I did want to throw my 2 cents into the hat. If you did enjoy, please like, subscribe, check out this thing, check out that thing. I'll see you next time.